At last we had some rain. The entire month of July was, well, not rain-free, but very, very little rain. And I just went over and checked the gauge. It only measures in inches. It's in one of the raised beds there, and it says we had almost 3 inches of rain. The interesting thing about it, normally with that much rain, the pathway coming out here would be very very wet and full of mud, and I would have been able to use the bridges that I built this year. I'm walking on top of the bridges, but there really isn't any moisture there. The fields and forest around just soaked up that 3 inches of rain because it was so dry here. Trees were already starting to lose leaves, and rather than changing to a nice fall color, they were turning yellow. So the 3 inches of rain got soaked into the ground very quickly. Starting to get some color in the plums. They were both the size I think that I expected them to be, quite small. Get a hand in there to show you. They're still quite firm. They aren't really ripened yet, but they are starting to change color. They're both the size of the ones that grow on a neighbor's tree, so I think probably this is, if not the same variety, a similar variety. I'm just hoping that I get enough of them that haven't got whatever that parasite is inside of them that made the sort of gel come out of them. It's down here, you can see they're not all turning. Some are just starting to get a little blush of color. So hopefully there'll be enough to make a small batch of jam before cold weather arrives. I haven't been showing you the sunberries, so I thought I'd give you a little look at them. There's quite a few ripe now. I left them alone, and they eventually did all ripen on the vine, but I haven't done anything with them other than eating them fresh. And earlier on I didn't care for the flavor, but I think that was just because they weren't ripe enough. They're very nice and sweet, very juicy. I'm not sure if you made them into a pie or whatever, you'd have to do something to counteract all the juice that's involved. But I brought them outside. They were in the hoop house, but I brought them out because I was beginning to get concerned that they might do the same thing that can't think of what you call them now, the other contraptions that I can't stand that are coming up in there everywhere, ground cherries, or they have another name in Europe, but I can't think of what that is right now either. But these are quite tasty. But I was afraid that if they dropped their fruit on the ground in the hoop house, that they would be a curse coming back everywhere next year. I'm having the same problem here with the leaves that I'm having inside the hoop house with the grapevines. Something is turning them into lace. I just finished pulling my onions, which I probably should have done several weeks ago, I think, but I wanted to show you this. What I grew this year, I think was just called a yellow onion, or yellow Canadian onion, or some such thing. Last year I grew the Spanish onions, which I think I'll go back to next year, but they were not supposed to be a multiplier onion. And look what this one did. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 onions formed on that set, and they're all very small. Now, that's the only one that happened to right from the beginning. But I have a number like this. Another one here, if you can see. That has split into 2 onions. And I'm wondering if that isn't because I didn't pull them soon enough, that they did that because they were left in the ground so long. Anyway, any of you people that have been growing onions longer than I have, please feel free to give me a theory as to why that happened. I'll show you now what I got in the entire crop of them, which, a lot of usable onions, but nothing compared to what I had last year. As I said, I just finished pulling them. I will leave these here in, well, it's kind of cloudy right now, but it's supposed to be a sunny, warm week. So I'll leave these here for a few days to get started curing before I clean them up some and cut the tops off of them and put them in the loft in the cabin to mature. Try to show you some of the idea of the sizes here. There were lots of small ones. Now that I'm looking for a real small one, I can't find one. Over here, I guess. They ranged all the way from, that's probably about the largest. Odd shape, really, too. I Like I say, I don't care for the variety. I've eaten a couple of them. They're fine. They're a nice onion, but I think I will go back to the Spanish onions next year. And then there are lots that are that size. I mean, that's a bit bigger than the onion set that I planted, but not a great deal. And again, we did have a lot of hot, dry weather, and I tried to keep them watered, but I have to hand water, so that may have been an issue. Anyway, I'm sure once these are dry, they'll have enough to last me for a few months, but they won't last as long as last year's crop did. And, take you over here, I got a few carrots out of it. They were just a couple of rows of them were planted down in amongst the onions. And pleased, I thought there would be a lot more deformed ones, but there aren't. Quite a few of them are a decent looking carrot, and then you get some like that. There was one that was worse than that. Here it is. Two-legged carrot, but that's because of the amount of compost in this bed, and I'm pleased with them. That's not as bad as I thought they would be. Well, this is my first picking of M-E-U-C-H, mooch beans. Not quite sure. And perhaps I haven't even got that spelled the way David had it written. That's what I took from what he had written on the packet of seeds. David, with the Work with Nature channel, sent me these a year or so ago when he lived in Switzerland, and he now lives in India with not a very good internet connection, I guess, so I'm not getting any response when I ask him what these things might be. I'm hoping some of you people out there will look at these and say, oh yes, those are, I've grown them for years. Well, please let me know what they are. This is when they're a bit more mature. They're quite purple with just a bit of green, and when they're younger, they're quite green with just a bit of purple. I haven't had any cooked yet. This is my first picking of them. They're prolific. I've been eating them raw in the garden, and they're very tasty, so I'm sure cooked they will be good too. But if you have any idea what these are, please let me know. Well, I was surprised when I got that basket of beans cut up, but there was enough to do 8-pint jars. I had to go pick a handful more, I guess, to go with them to fill the last jar. They've done what they usually do. They shrink and float up from the bottom. I didn't bother filming the process involved, and I'll explain why. It's a low-acid food product, so it has to be canned under pressure in a pressure canner, and the instructions for each canner is different, so I didn't want to give the instructions for mine and have somebody else follow it, and their canner being different and not properly canning the beans. Low acid, they have to reach 240 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 116 degrees Celsius. And of course, in a hot water bath, it's only going to go to 100 degrees Celsius, 212 degrees Fahrenheit, the temperature of boiling. So it has to be under pressure. And once it reaches that temperature, you determine that by the pressure of your gauge is reading, and on mine that's 11 pounds, but anyway, it's different for every one. Once you reach that, it has to maintain that for 20 minutes, and that will kill botulism, which is the concern here with low acid canning. Anyway, I got 8 jars, and I have a few more on cooking for dinner. Well, this is the bed where the onions were growing. I just took the garden fork and turned the soil over. As I said earlier, we had heavy rain only a few days ago. It shows how quickly a raised bed will dry out. This was as dry as dust. Lots of earthworms in there, though, if that's an indication of the quality of the soil, I guess. But anyway, what I've done is I turned it over with a garden fork, and then I gave it a heavy planting of a cover crop, and I'm going to grow buckwheat. If you haven't seen buckwheat seed before, I saved some. Very interesting shape. I don't know what you'd call it. They're like little pyramids, I guess. I grew them years ago, but I haven't grown them in late years. I never seem to have time to grow a cover crop or green manure. Usually by the time I'm finished with a garden bed, it's too late. It would never get much more than germinated before the frost would kill it. Well, this is the last day of August, so there should be plenty of time for it to get up and grow, possibly bloom. I'll have to watch it. I don't want it to set seeds. If it starts to set seed, I'll turn it under the soil this fall. And you can see down there in the far corner, that is my plant cam set up watching it. I think it's still working. I don't know. The display on it has gone a bit strange since the last time I used it last spring there when I did that time-lapse of the snow melting out here at the cabin. It's hard to read now, the words on the display. So anyway, tomorrow I will come out and take the memory card out of it and put it in the computer and see if it's actually taking photographs or not. But if it is, we'll have some time-lapse later on of the buckwheat growing and germinating. I'm starting to be concerned that my Basque Espelette peppers might start to spoil the ones that are really very ripe. So I'm going to pick them, the really red ones, the ones that aren't fully changed yet, I'll leave on the plant. But I'm going to pick the ones that are fully ripe and hang them up to dry. I'm just scared that once they get fully ripe, they'll go over the top and start to spoil on the vine. I don't want that to happen. They're such beautiful peppers. I hope I'm doing this right, Elise. I'll show you what I'm doing here in a minute and show you where I'm going to hang them up to dry. Altogether, I picked 15 that were fully ripe, and I think I might have done something right for a change. That's one that I picked that was fully ripe and it started to rot on the plant, so that's a waste. All I'm doing is just stringing them on, well, it's not a thread, it's a thick stuff. I don't know what you call it. It's sort of braided. Don't recall why I bought it, but I've had it for a number of years. You probably have to be from Maine or from the East Coast to know what Marden's is. There's several Marden's stores in Maine, and they're wonderful. They buy out bankrupt companies and fire sales and all that kind of stuff, and you get some terrific buys in there. That came from Marden's. All I'm doing is just putting I have the string or braided stuff, whatever that is, on a darning needle and just putting it through on the end, on the green part. And I will tie this together into a loop and show you them hanging. I'm going to hang them in the cabin to dry. Hopefully I won't find these all down on the floor the next time I come in here, but I will just continue to pick ripe ones and do them in bunches like that and hang them across the ceiling in here to dry. I have 4 plants, and there's a number of the peppers that are half to 3/4 ripe, so they ripen quite quickly. So the next 2 or 3 days I'll have more to pick. Interesting point though, I have one plant that has a lot of peppers on it and none of them have ripened. Seems to me, if I remember back this spring, that there was one plant that kind of struggled and finally got going, so that must be what that is. I also have a number of the Mexican Ancho Poblano peppers, and those seedlings came from Richter's, and I don't think were started as early as these Espelettes were in my house under lights. I don't know when they started theirs, but the seedlings were much smaller than what I was working with. And they've got a lot of peppers on them, but none of them have started to ripen yet. But they should be safe in the hoop house and ripen this fall. Not much light up here, but this is up in the loft in the cabin where my onions have been put to dry and cure. And over here a little further, those are the garlic and my few shallots over in the far corner there. Not as many onions as I had last year, but when I don't know, I filled that basket that I used, one that you just saw the peppers come out of, filled that twice to bring it in here, and it was heavy. I would say, I don't know, 15 pounds or more each time. But that's before they start to cure. Once they've dried and cured, of course, they've lost some of their weight. But enough onions that will last me till at least partway through the winter. I guess I haven't said, but this is September 1st with the clips on the Espelette peppers, and now just a few things to show you how the things that I put out for fall growth. Succession planting is the word that I was struggling for. This is the Rapini, so I'm starting with the one that didn't work, or hasn't worked very well so far. They should all have looked like this plant here. It's coming along quite nicely, and I could start using some stuff off of it. I have picked off blossoms constantly since I put them in here. When they were only 2 or 3 inches tall, little seedlings, they started blooming. So I don't know what the issue was. The fact that I started seedlings and transplanted them rather than direct sowing them, or if the shortening days, the shorter days this time of year made them bolt and bloom, I don't know. But anyway, I keep pulling these things off and throwing them away, and some of the plants are getting larger, so I guess there's hopes of getting at least a meal or two off of them yet. These are the Salanova lettuce plants that I transplanted, and all of them continue to grow and are looking much nicer than they did when I first put them in, is what I'm trying to say, I guess. There's at least these 2 varieties of green, and there's also 2 varieties of red. I'll move you down a bit here so you can see it. There's this kind here, and this one is kind of a frizzly. Hasn't been any problem so far with slugs, but I have been putting an organic slug bait around them, but it won't be long now and I'll be able to start using those. And what I'm going to do with all that lettuce when it all matures at once, my neighbors may be lucky and get some lettuce, I guess. And these are the purple turnips, and they have really done well in this. Well, it's about 2 weeks, I guess, since I transplanted them out here. No, I'm lying. It's over 3 weeks. The 8th of September would be a month, I guess. Anyway, they have, you can see down there, and they're not, they've got little purple turnips starting to form. And at long last, I'm going to get some chard to use. My first planting of chard did nothing, tiny little things. But this is starting to grow. In another week or so I'll be able to start using leaves, and somehow in with it a turnip got in with the chard, I don't know, but anyway, those are doing quite well. Hopefully the lens hasn't fogged up, I can't really tell, but if it's a little misty around the corners, it's because we're back in the hoop house again. It is very hot and humid in here. These are the beets, which were very slow to get started after I transplanted them, but just lately they've started to get much larger, so hopefully I'll get at least some baby beets out of it sometime this fall. And that is the last of the things that I planted for succession planting this fall. I'll just give you a look at my ripening tomatoes, and that will end this video. Well, thank you for watching, everybody. I will soon be picking and preserving in some way my tomato crop, I guess. I think it might be the first time I ever removed most of the foliage, and I'm impressed with what that does. I have a lot of ripe tomatoes. I'm eating ripe tomatoes every day. I can't keep up with them, so soon they're going to have to be canned, and that will probably be in a future video in a week or so. Thank you very much for watching.